Intermittent fasting, super popular topic. Today we're going to go through our how-to guide. We're going to reveal the biggest secret to our intermittent fasting nutrition program that we implement here at Unity Gym and for our FMS online tribe. Now we're also going to answer a couple of great questions, and we're going to talk about the real special reason why everyone should be adopting a time-delayed eating and eventually intermittent fasting regime for optimal health. All that and more coming up right after this. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image. And hey, if we haven't met before, I'm Yanni Baumeister. This is Rad Baumeister. Behind the camera, we got Richard Lellies. We are Unity Gym, the gym that teaches people how to move and nourish instead of diet and exercise. How are you feeling today, Rad, other than your man flu cold that we're both dealing with?
Yeah, feel good.
Yep, awesome.
For sure.
Awesome. The one good thing about being healthy when you get a influenza or an upper respiratory infection is that you get through it nice and quickly, and the severity isn't so bad. So
yeah,
kudos to that.
It's just bloody kids at daycare, man. We've both got kids at daycare now, and I've just never experienced so many little viruses coming home. My son's always sick now, and he was never ever sick before, and you go to daycare and it's just one thing after the next. So anyway, right. That's life.
It's all good. It's life. We carry on. We got a great topic. Look, we've started the discussion of intermittent fasting because it is something that we advocate, and we've had a lot of interest in it. So we're going to continue down this rabbit hole. We can only ever share our experiences through research and the development of our program, our experimentation, self-experimentation, and also the way we roll these things out and implement with our clients. Disclaimer, as always, we're not dietitians, and if you have specific needs, we do always suggest you go and seek the advice of a professional. A dietitian will be able to coach you through both the scientific side of nutrition and also the emotional side around nutrition, which is where a lot of people stumble. And that's what we're talking about today. We're talking about the vicious transition phase, which is something that most people fall over on. And it's through research and development, we've developed a progressive approach to intermittent fasting, which I believe is really the secret to the success of our program. And it's the secret to our success on intermittent fasting, and we're going to discuss that in detail. We're also going to talk about, which is where I'd like to start, why we are we're such proponents of time-delayed eating and intermittent fasting. Why don't you start by sharing where that comes from, the work that Sachin Panda's doing on circadian rhythm?
Sorry, do you mean where my passion of intermittent fasting comes from? Why I believe in it?
Well, you can start with that. Yeah. Why not?
Because it makes you feel better. That's why I do it.
Yeah.
I feel better and I perform better.
Yep.
Which is contrary to what you would believe, and definitely contrary to what I believed.
Yep.
Like before starting intermittent fasting a few years ago, there's no one could get in the way of my breakfast.
Yep.
Like I was, and not only my breakfast, but my snacks between breakfast and lunch, and between lunch and dinner.
Yep.
But I was always bloated.
Well, we're raised in a Western culture. We're raised to be taught that breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
Yeah.
They teach that to kids in school. I think they still do.
Yeah, I remember believing that until just recently. And even though I was actively trying to eliminate foods that cause inflammation, so things like gluten and wheat and dairy and sugar and alcohol, even though I was actively trying to reduce those foods, I was still really bloated. And it was funny, I remember when I was talking to Aaron, our friend Aaron McKenzie from Origin of Energy, about intermittent fasting, and I was talking to him about reducing inflammation, and he said, it's funny, the best way to reduce inflammation is just to not eat for a little while. Yeah. And I went, oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
It does.
It really
does.
does.
Now that we're doing time-delayed, time-restricted eating, my inflammation's just dramatically reduced. And everybody says it. People say, oh, you look so slim in your face, and more colour in your eyes, less puffy in your eyes, and things like that. And
Yeah.
It's not that you're slim. It's not that we've lost weight or lost fat or anything like that. It's just that we've reduced inflammation.
Yeah.
And that's where you see it.
Yeah.
So that's why I do it.
Yeah.
I do it because it makes me feel better, and it just makes sense now that I've been doing it for long enough. Now that I've made the transition and it just is normal to do time restricted eating, I just cannot imagine going back. It just seems so stupid to go
that concept of being so tethered to food and being on the clock and thinking, oh my God, it's 12, I have to eat something,
Yep.
or it's 8 o'clock, I haven't had breakfast, and your whole mindset shifts into this panic, And
Yep.
I've had a lot of people reach out to me since doing these videos talking about the fact that, they just can't fathom skipping a meal because they get trembles and the shakes. I had a conversation online via email with a lady yesterday, and she experienced exactly what I used to experience, which was that when she goes a certain period of time, more than 3 hours without food, she literally starts to tremble. And she starts to, I used to feel faint. People used to say I got pale in my face. And I had just conditioned myself to think that I was just some, anomaly that had to be fed every 3 hours. Otherwise, my whole system shut down, And my body produced sensations and urges that really reinforced that to me, And this lady was experiencing the same thing. I'm really sorry if you're watching this. I can't remember your name at the moment, but thank you for emailing me. It was very, very very similar to what I was experiencing, And I truly believe, barring any sinister issue that's going on there, which, as I said in my email, if you were working with us, I would probably look deeper into family history. I might get pathology tested to see if you're insulin resistant or diabetic or anything like that. Cancel out anything sinister with the cardiovascular system. I would suggest getting your blood pressure checked whilst you're experiencing those, so you can buy a blood pressure monitor and check that. Just to have a look what's going on, and that's what I did. But then once I went right through to having meetings and consults with friends of mine who are cardiologists and heart surgeons, because I thought there was something wrong with me, But it just turned out that it was just my body's programming around food, and as soon as my blood sugars started to drop down, which is what happens naturally when you go into that starvation mode or you're fasting into a fasted state, and that's the concept of metabolic flexibility. When you start to tremble and shake and all that, you're terribly unflexible metabolically, and your body's not tooled and conditioned to be able to switch from the glycogen substrate when your blood sugar starts to drop over to the fat substrate. And that's super important that you can do that, One, for the reason that you just feel like crap if you don't eat every 3 hours. So it's very expensive, and you're very tethered to food, it makes it very hard to adhere to a nutrition plan or diet that when you're trying to improve body composition. But also, it's very healthy because you increase your body's ability to metabolize fat when you're more metabolically flexible. And that's, again, something that I keep reinforcing, because that's one of the really, really good benefits to intermittent fasting that are proven in humans, And so you don't really realize that when you're going through that transition period, but that is the problem. You're not some anomaly and you've got some physiological thing going on where you have to eat every 3 hours. That's dogma, and that's just a little bit of misunderstanding of what's going on in the body. You just need to become more metabolically flexible, and the exercise itself of training yourself through that is going to be remarkably beneficial for your health.
Yeah, it's. I think we're just really unaware and really not with it as to what our bodies are designed to do and where we've come from to get to where we are in modern day society. And you and I are 40 years old, so we don't even know life before the 70s and 80s,
Yeah.
But there's no one alive that knows life before the 1900s. So we don't know, we've become detached from where we came from and from what life would have been like before before farming,
Yeah.
and before agriculture. And even maybe during that time, I'm sure that the way that we ate during winters and things would have been.
We certainly haven't, unless you were filthy rich, very affluent. We certainly haven't had the abundance of food and the access to abundant calorie dense foods ever before.
Yeah.
So,
we can all. I think I'm going to call it what it is. I think you have to be an idiot if you don't look at the state of health today and say we're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
Like, we're collectively in the Western world, we're getting it wrong.
Yeah.
And we went through this low fat phase, and it got worse. Everything got way worse when we removed fat, which means you have to add sugar to foods to make it taste better.
Yeah. More sugar.
More sugar. Yeah. So we know that didn't work, and then there's been a whole bunch of other different types of dietary recommendations that have come around, and everything that's coming out there, like the more information that we get, the worse the health situation seems to be getting. And intermittent fasting or time delayed eating is proving to be the fountain of youth, the way that it upregulates cell autophagy, and it just makes sense when you go into it. And the problem that people are having, like this conversation that you're having, is they're just not understanding this transition, and they're not understanding that anything that you do is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Any change is going to be a challenge. Like, if you want to change, I had a story going in my head before I had a kid that I had to get 8 hours sleep a night. I was I live really by a circadian rhythm more than most people. Like, when it gets to about 8:30 or 9, I'm really, really tired and I want to go to sleep. And if I didn't get 8 hours sleep, I was really, really grumpy. And I definitely agree with the science that you need 8 hours sleep. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that. But since I've had a kid, there's no way I get even 6 hours sleep a night.
Yeah.
I just don't.
Yeah.
And the first 6 months of it was absolute hell. It was torture. And it still is. It's not like it's easy, but I've adapted.
Yeah.
You adapt, and when you have a kid, you're forced to. But this whole idea of transitioning to time-restricted eating is a choice.
Yeah.
It's not something that's forced on people, and people just don't seem to have the backbone to see it through, and or also the smarts to create a plan. And it's like what we deal with people doing our program that come in and they say, I want to learn how to do muscle ups. And you tell them, okay, cool, well, we've got to do about 5 months of prehabilitation work to get you ready for that. And the majority of tough guys out there, they say, no, I don't want to do that. And they go around the corner to somewhere else, and where they get shown how to do muscle ups straight away, and they're back here 3 months later with tendonitis or shoulder injuries because they didn't do it. The same thing happens with transitioning to time-restricted eating. You can't just go from 0 to hero. So you can't hear someone talking about how they do 24-hour fasts or 16-8 every day and expect that you can just make the leap from where you are to that.
Yep.
And for you and me, the latest thing that we're doing now is, like, we've been doing 16-8 for a long period of time, which means that we don't eat for 16 hours and then we eat everything in 16 hours, but we have coffee.
Eat everything in 8 hours.
Eat everything in 8 hours, sorry. But when we get up in the morning and we're still in that 16-hour fasting period, we've been having black coffee. But our latest, and I'm telling this to the audience, not you, our latest thing is that we're starting to not even have black coffee
Abstain
or green
from
tea.
anything other than water.
It's just water.
Until our fasting period's over. And let's dive into that.
Well, hang on, I'll just finish what I was saying, because when I started doing fasting, I started by doing only 2 days a week, and I was definitely having black coffee, and I don't know that I would have gotten through it without black coffee.
Yeah.
That was my thing when I got really hungry and I had black coffee and it got me through it. I don't know how well I would have got through. But now, like, I haven't, it's been, I ate dinner I finished eating about 14. I'm looking at the clock. I finished eating about 14 hours ago, and I haven't had any coffee today or anything except water, and I feel absolutely fine.
Yeah.
You know, my first meal, my first food will be in about another 3 hours, so it'll be after about 17 hours, and I won't have had anything except water.
Yeah.
So
let's talk. There's two things I want to talk about. One is which we just tipped on there, adopting a progressive approach, and this is so important if you think that you'll want to embark on any lifestyle intervention, really, quite frankly, but specifically a diet. Because any diet, you'll have a transition phase. Whether you're trying to gain weight, lose weight, or maintain weight in a healthier fashion, there's going to be a transition phase. From the moment that we were weaned from our mother's breast milk, or if you were a formula baby, probably earlier, because formula has more carbohydrate. Breast milk is when you're on a breast milk diet as a baby, you are ketogenic 100% of the time. It's just fat and protein in breast milk, so and water, obviously. So we don't actually consume any carbohydrate until we're weaned and we start to eat eat regular food. And because of the fact that we're a Western society, the first things that we feed babies is usually some form of formula or carbohydrate, like crackers and biscuits and things like that they're least likely to choke on. And unfortunately, that starts this whole process of us becoming very attuned to glycogen as our primary fuel source, and we lose that metabolic flexibility, the capability of being able to switch easily and survive comfortably on predominantly fats and proteins. And it's not good for us, I mean, it's a very debatable topic as to how bad it is, but the science is really quite compelling now to prove that it is really quite bad for our health. Now, the problem with all of this and how this affects you guys out there is that when you try to change your diet, I'd say 7 out of 10 of the best diets will restrict carbohydrate, and the intermittent fasting diets restrict everything. And any diet puts you in caloric deficit, which usually requires your body to burn into stored fat, which requires you to be able to switch over to a different metabolic substrate, to go from carbohydrate to fat. So no matter what diet you try to do to improve body composition or improve health, you're having to go through this transition of becoming more metabolically flexible. Now, most of us try and do it like that, like Rad just indicated. We try to go from zero to hero, from what we're doing right now, which is a heavily carbohydrate and sugar addicted diet, to the ultimate, which we've been told or read about or watched on one of these YouTube videos, And the secret to success is having a progressive approach. So for us, we start with using coffee to help us abstain from food and to help control hunger pains. And then we're leveling up now and going to just water during our fasting periods. I went from a slow intermittent fasting regime, which was a 5-2 diet, to a 14-10 and then a 16-8, and then experimented with 24 and 72-hour fasts. But that happened over a 6-month period, I didn't just start experimenting with 24 and 72-hour diets. I would have gone nuts. It probably would have made me sick, So that's the first real key to this discussion, is that you have to get a program that helps transition you through that period where your body's learning to become more metabolically flexible. You're literally retooling yourself. The hormones are adapting. All these metabolic processes are occurring in your body. Now, and it starts with a carbohydrate deload period. Any good intermittent fasting diet should start with a carbohydrate deload period, because if you're like the 90% of the rest of the Western world, you are going to be carb dependent, and you're going to be very, very probably subconsciously addicted to carbohydrate and sugar, and mostly processed low fiber stuff. So it's super important that you do that period of deloading off carbohydrate, and you should, before you try your first fast, do a full day with zero carbohydrate, like below 50 grams of carbohydrate. So you actually switch on the ketosis mechanisms in your body. That will make it so much easier to adhere to the intermittent fasting program and get through that initial transition period. It's not something you have to do forever. I had a great question come through from our YouTube subscribers asking whether you had to abstain from carbs forever and basically be in ketosis to effectively be on a intermittent fasting and get the benefits from intermittent fasting. That's not true at all. I still eat a lot of unprocessed carbohydrate during my refeed window. I'm sure Rad does too. And from time to time, we have cheat meals where we eat processed carbs, burgers, pizza, stuff like that. It's not often, but it does happen. So you can certainly still do that. Now, why should we be worrying about this? And this is where I wanted to dive into the circadian rhythm and the metabolic enzymes. Do you want to dive into that?
Yeah, sure. Our bodies we're diocturnal animals.
Diurnal.
Diurnal, sorry.
Diurnal.
Diurnal.
Nocturnal is evening and diurnal is day.
Yeah,
We're
so
day
the opposite
creatures.
of nocturnal. We're day creatures. So our whole bodies are geared towards being awake when the sun is up. And when the sun comes up, a whole bunch of processes start switching on and start firing up. And there's enzymes in our digestive system that start switching on when the sun comes up. And the research shows that they switch off after about 12 hours of being switched on. But here's the thing, they start waking up, or they're geared to switch on when the sun comes up, but they only actually really kick in when the first bit of anything goes in your mouth that isn't water. So you can cheat when that process starts, but you can't cheat when it ends, because the research shows that it pretty much ends after 12 hours after it begins. So, and what happens is when you eat outside of that period, outside of that 12-hour window, your body can't metabolize fat as well, and it's
and
more
glycogen.
And glycogen, and it's more likely to store it in lipids in the fat cells, which means, in layman's terms, it's more likely to make you fat.
It's also essentially what happens is that you become pre-diabetic, and pre-diabetic is when you're you're becoming insulin resistant, and the body's no longer able to metabolize those sugars and fats. So what Rad's talking about there, when you eat outside of that 12-hour window and your metabolic enzymes have now switched off and gone back to sleep, you're not metabolizing the sugar and fat. It stays in your system, and it causes a lot of damage. This is how we cause damage to our cardiovascular system, our blood cells, all the cells in our body, our organs. Everything is damaged quite heavily when we do that. So, the concept of getting that window going properly, and you don't need to do a 16-8 to do it. You can do a 12-12.
You can do a 12-12, but the idea is that you're very well aware of when you finished eating your last piece of anything that wasn't water. And let's say, for the average person in the Western world, it's realistic to say maybe 8 p.m. 8 p.m. would be the last thing that you put in your mouth. And that would mean that no snacks, no anything after 8 o'clock. And that would mean that you wouldn't eat anything before 8 a.m., which is what most Westerners aren't doing. When most people that we speak to, they're having food right up until 9, maybe even 10 o'clock. Some people even 11 o'clock and later.
Yep.
And then they're having a coffee or a juice or a biscuit or a piece of toast or something first thing in the morning, which can be as early for some people as 6 a.m.
Yep.
So a lot of people are eating for maybe 16 hours and fasting for only 8 hours, which is absolutely wrong, and it causes a lot of problems to our health. So in the very least, what you can do if you want to get started with this, like a really easy start point is just do 12-12, where you don't eat anything. So if you finish eating dinner at 8, like that's your last bite of food, then you don't eat anything before 8 a.m. in the morning.
You don't
that
eat
means
or
no
drink.
coffee either.
Yeah, and
No
you'd
coffee,
be
no tea,
surprised,
anything.
guys. Most people who actually diarize this, it sounds easy, and most people say, oh yeah, that's easy, I'll do that anyway. Most people are not. Most people are eating for 15 hours on average, or consuming stuff that activates and stimulates the metabolic enzymes for 15 hours a day. And it's not good. For 3 hours a day, you are damaging your body. You're wreaking havoc to the systems and processes in your body, and it's also very, very hard to lose weight when you're doing that. So that's the first thing. And I would also talk about the importance of having a progressive approach where you deload from carbohydrate. You're gonna have to go through that transition phase. It's very, very good to have some support whilst you do so. Like, we have a really unique program here because we have our tribe that supports one another, whether it's in the gym here or on our FMS online program. We have our Movement Mastermind Facebook group. So everyone experiences all of this stuff together, and that level of support is kind of what you would need when you go to a dietitian or something like that. You need an accountability group or someone who is going to support you. Those are really the two things that we wanted to drive home in today's discussion, guys. I think we're probably out of time. Tomorrow we're going to go change it up a little bit. We've had some really great questions come in about mobility and flexibility, and we're going to be talking about how a leg length discrepancy can really change up your symmetry in your stretches, so front splits and middle splits and things like that. And we're going to go out on the gym floor and show you a couple of really great hacks to help overcome a leg length discrepancy. Most people, I think it's like 2 out of 3 people, do suffer from a leg length discrepancy. Both Rad and I do, and it does affect your ability to increase mobility, and you need to know how to work around it to stretch properly. So if you're trying to level up the movement of your body and your mobility and flexibility, tomorrow is a must-watch show. Anyway, guys, until then, thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Take care. We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.